Welcome back to the Pack and Clint show here on Total Coverage Sports. I'm Pack, that's Clint. We're super excited for you guys to be here with us on another Tuesday. We have the college football playoffs starting this Saturday, so Clint and I, we're going to be breaking down two of the games. We won't talk too much about JMU against Oregon or Tulane against Ole Miss, just because I think everyone kind of knows how those games are going to go. So there's not a whole lot of necessity to do that. Please like, subscribe, comment, retweet, follow Ghost on Twitter, follow Clint at NBA Hornboy, follow me at Pack Talks XO. We really appreciate your guys' support. And Clint, how you doing?
Doing good, man. Just had my last final today, so it's nice to get that out of the way and just have a nice month off of school.
Yeah, it's nice for a lot of college students because you go straight from finals. Now you get to start your winter break, and what's a better way to start your winter break than two really good college football games Friday night and then Saturday morning? We're going to talk about the Saturday morning game first, and that's going to be A&M versus Miami. Clint, are you planning to go to that game? I know that obviously
Yeah,
you live in College Station for most of the year, so
yeah, I'm gonna be there. Man, I'm going to college game day. I'm not sure, but I'll definitely be there.
that'll be a really fun environment. This will be the first time Cal Field gets to host a postseason game. In terms of because how has the student reception been like the past 2 weeks, knowing that you guys are going to host a playoff game, and what's that kind of been like on campus?
I mean, it's just been how it's been all year. I mean, um, obviously when Texas beat A&M, like the students kind of got a little bit like they were talking about less, but other than that, I mean, the the buzz on campus has been a lot. It's been bigger than it's ever been, to be completely honest. I mean, you have people I've met who have said it's been bigger than when Johnny was there. So I mean, it's kind of says something. Obviously, getting their first preseason game to host at home since actually ever. Obviously, probably they're not that thrilled at the course they got to get to the national championship. They got the course of doom and despair, having to go if they do beat Miami, having to likely go through Ohio State and then Georgia, and whoever they play in the championship won't be easy. So they got the hardest road to get there, but I mean they're still excited about it. First ever playoff game, first time competing for a national championship since probably the '90s. I can think of.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect way for us to start this. So to me, I think it's a really interesting game because, and we touched briefly on it last week. Neither quarterback's going to inspire much confidence in their team. But I think there's certain things that each quarterback does really well in this matchup that you feel like can be pretty significant swings for A&M. It's can Marcel Reed's legs be a factor, whether that's in zone read, power read, bash read, whatever it is in terms of design quarterback run, and then also what can he do out of muddy pockets? Can he can he can he scramble? Can he make plays go longer? And can he find receivers? Can he extend plays? If he can do that and he can hit some of those tend to be real opportunities for explosives with Mario Craver and Casey Concepcion. So that's one thing for Marcel Reed in terms of a strength of his that could be a real swing in this game. And then for Miami, it's Carson Beck's processing and how good he is in the pocket in terms of his understanding of how to navigate muddy pockets, knowing when it's time to get off of a read, be playing on time. If he can do that against this A&M defense and stay ahead of the sticks, where you're not giving them the opportunity to be in third and long, give Elko the opportunity to do all the different pressure pass that he wants to utilize on third down. I think that's really, really important for both teams. And if both quarterbacks do that, then I think teams will be comfortable in terms of their ability to win. Now, them doing that is harder said. It's harder said than done. But to me, that's where it starts. Is what quarterback can utilize their strengths and what team allows their quarterback strengths to be used best and actually show up.
Yeah. Um, like you said, I think the biggest thing is going to be how the quarterbacks play. You have Marcel Reed, who his big thing is being able to create plays with his legs. He can extend time in the pocket. He can scramble and make defenders miss and create time for his receivers to get open. He can be a downhill threat when running the ball. He can get you 10, 15 yards when you need him to. He can create a lot of plays, but also the problem with him is he can be a little bit he can have happy feet sometimes. He can he can misread a lot of things. So um, that's one thing you need to look out for is if, especially, which I'll get to this in a second, but I'm gonna go with Beck now. Um, for Beck, he he's a weird quarterback because you know he has the ability to be really good. You've seen it in many different scenarios. You've seen him have great games where he's processing everything well. He has time in the pocket, everything's clean, and he's able to have a very efficient game. But then you see those other games where it seems like he has at least 2 to 3 of these a year. They're like the patented Carson Beck just complete meltdowns where he will throw two, three, four interceptions. I mean, he'll look like Quinn did against Georgia last year in the first game. So I think this game is going to really depend on probably turnovers. I would say is the biggest key for me in this game. But also, I want to go to A&M for this because with A&M, we saw this happen against Texas. We saw this happen against South Carolina in the first half. You've seen it happen a couple times this year where at points when A&M struggled to run the ball, that's when their offense starts to sputter. That's when Marcel Reed starts to really struggle because they're not respecting the run as much because you're not showing that it's a threat at all. So when that happens, that's when Marcel Reed gets his happy feet. That's when he starts going through his reads too quickly or not even going through them fully. And that's when he starts making errant throws like he did in that second interception against Texas, where he doesn't make the complete read and he just throws it right in Kobe Black's face. So I mean, that's going to be one of the biggest keys for me is can A&M get the run going? Because if they can't, I don't see them winning this game. And also for A&M on defense, I think you have to do a really good job at stopping Malachi Tony because on the contrary, when other teams had success running the ball, which we saw for Texas, when they had success running the ball, it really opened up the downfield game. You had multiple explosive plays with injuries with Wingo, and you start to really make those DBs beat you. And with a guy like Malachi Tony, who has killer speed, who is very agile, he's a really good receiver, almost holding 1,000 yards this year. You have to be really cognizant of him and make sure that he does not get behind you because if he does and you allow him to make plays, he's kind of like a Zachariah Branch to me, to where he's very explosive. He can kill you whether it's a screen, a deep shot, or whatever it is. So I think those are going to be the keys for A&M. For Miami, it's going to be stopping the run because if they can't stop that run, depending on if Flavion Moss is back or not, then they're going to get killed. I mean, that's just my opinion with it because Casey Concepcion and Mario Craver, they're great receivers, and I think it's going to just come down to the turnovers and who can get the ball moving on the ground. But I think with it being at home, with just how and I we talked about it on the Inside Texas show where you Kyle Field isn't necessarily hostile; it's more so annoying. But I definitely think that the players at A&M thrive off of that, and I think that they will get the win. I will take them winning I'll say about 28-24. I think it'll be a really close game, but I think Aggies will pull it out.
Yeah, I think you said a lot of that really well. I'll expand on some of it. So this week I watched a decent amount of Miami tape defensively. I wanted to see kind of what was Heatherman going to do to Marcel Reed in terms of what were the pictures he was going to throw at him. Did I think that that was going to be something that could fluster Marcel Reed? And heading into it, because of what they were a lot at Minnesota, Heatherman, I mean, I expected to see a lot of cover three, a lot of different disguising of coverages. I expected to see them be very zone heavy, and this year they're really not that. They play a lot of man coverage. They'll do a lot of just straight up cover one. Now they'll occasionally show quarters, and then they'll roll a safety down, and they will play cover one, but they don't do a whole lot of disguising. It's kind of what you see is what you get. They're going to play a lot of cover one. They'll play some cover three alongside of it. They honestly pressure more on first and second down than they do on third down. On third down, you see them get into odd fronts a lot. So they'll play with a head up nose and then 2-5 techniques or even 2-9 techniques. And what they'll do is they'll just let Ruben Bain and the Mestador guy, they'll just let them eat. They'll let them go after the passer with two-way goes. It's not a whole lot of playing with tremendous rush lane discipline. So to me, I think this is a game where if you're A&M, you do kind of feel comfortable in the matchup. Um, I because the one thing that I think Marcel Reed can do is he can play versus man coverage because Clint, you know this. It's pretty easy to go through reads when you're playing man coverage. It's you're open or you're not. You see a receiver, he's either open, then you throw it to him. If he's not, you move on to the next read. It's not like zone coverage where you have to read leverages and understand space a little bit more and understand how guys are moving in terms of is their body weight leaned in a certain way? Are they flashing to one side? There's a lot more that goes into dissecting zone coverage for a quarterback. Um, so that plays into Marcel Reed's strengths, and it really plays into his legs. We saw the last team that tried to play a lot of man coverage against A&M, and that was South Carolina and LSU. And in the second half of South Carolina, Marcel Reed's legs were a really big factor in the comeback. And against LSU, he torched them with his legs. So I think this is a matchup where if you're A&M, you do feel comfortable with Marcel Reed. You do think that there is some real opportunity for him to make some plays. Now, with that said, it's entirely possible that Miami, because they did do this against Notre Dame, like they were very zone heavy against Notre Dame, it's possible that they show a lot of different pictures to Marcel Reed. They could play cover one on certain downs and then be very zone heavy on other downs and continuously change the picture on him, which is what I would do. And so there is a little bit of uncertainty in terms of what is Miami going to do? What coverage are they going to throw at Marcel Reed throughout the entirety of the game? Because if it's just cover one, cover three, he's seen enough of both that I think he'll be pretty comfortable in terms of what he's seeing, especially knowing that he's had about a week and a half now to just spend all the time watching that tape and figuring out what Miami does. And also, I don't think that Miami is going to bully A&M's offensive line the way Texas was able to, where Marcel Reed was consistently under pressure and A&M couldn't run the ball. I don't know that I think Miami's going to do that to A&M. I do think A&M is going to be able to run the ball at a serviceable level. Now, I don't think it'll be 5 yards a carry or 6 yards a carry, but I think they'll get 4 yards per carry, something like that. And if Le'Veon Moss is playing, I think that number goes from 4 yards per carry to 4.5 to even five, just because of how good he is and in terms of his ability, his contact balance, his ability to make a guy miss, his ability to make 3 yards turn into 6 yards. That would be a really big ad for them, like you mentioned. And then on the other side, you mentioned it. A&M has really allowed everyone to run the ball on them. Their rushing stats look good until you sack adjust them, and you see it's a pretty porous run defense. And it starts with a lot of the stuff they do in terms of just structurally. They run a lot of stunts, they blitz a lot, and when you do that, you do create a little bit of it's a little bit unsound, right? Because you're just doing so much. You're not playing static. You're not playing with a stack fit. You're sending a bunch of bodies, and you don't know what happens typically in terms of run blocking when that happens. So there's a little bit of uncertainty in terms of that. If you're an A&M fan, you don't know what you're going to get in terms of your run defense. You think you're going to have success running the ball, but you don't know if you're going to have success stopping the run. And that's always going to be a worry for them. And then the other thing is their linebackers aren't super consistent. I know Torian York gets a lot of love nationally. I'm not so sure that I think the tape shows that at all, quite frankly. I think he's got good moments where he's fitting the run really well. I think he's also got a lot of moments where he overfits or he's jumping in the wrong gap. And those are things that can't happen against a team like Miami. And then in terms of what A&M is going to do on the back end, they're just like Miami. They're going to play a lot of cover one. They're almost exclusively a press man team. They will try to play some cover three in there and they'll throw that up as a changeup, but they're going to be pretty heavy in terms of they want to be a middle field closed team. And on third down, they want to send 5, 6, or 7 guys. They want to create havoc. And Carson Beck has struggled against man coverage. That has been the thing that, even go back to what he was at Georgia, that's been the consistent thing that he's had a hard time with. Zone coverage, he has a lot of success. He sees the field really well. He knows what he's looking at. He processes at a really high level. So zone coverage is something that I think Carson Beck would have a lot of success against. The problem is A&M doesn't run a whole lot of zone coverage. And all that to say, I think A&M has a couple of really distinct advantages in this game in terms of I think what Miami does opens itself well to what A&M does in terms of what Miami does in terms of scheme, I think plays into what A&M wants to be. And I think what Miami does schematically offensively does not harm what A&M wants to do. So I'm going to be with you. I think early in this cycle, right on that Sunday, I remember telling you, and I remember telling a lot of people, I thought Miami was going to win. Um, I'm going to change my tune now. I'm going to take A&M to win. I do think it will be a close game. Like you said, I'll take something very similar to you. I'll take it to be 27-20. Miami is driving late, and Carson Beck turns it over, and that ends the game. But I will take A&M. I think it's also really important to remember, and this will be the last thing I say before we move on to the OU game. Miami, the biggest place that Miami has played in this year was Doak Walker. It was against Florida State, and there was 67,000 people. That is going to be A&M will have something like 33 to 40,000 more people there. That is going to be a significant advantage for A&M because Miami has not been very good on the road this year, and this is a way better and a way tougher environment to play in than anything they've seen all year.
Yeah, man, I agree. I mean, it's gonna be it possibly could break the attendance record. I don't know. The attendance record's around 110, so I mean that they can pack that stadium. So it'll definitely be something for Miami to have to battle because I mean, even at home when you aren't playing around a full crowd most of the time, when because Miami they're notorious for not having a full capacity game really ever. I mean, even during the Cam Ward era, you maybe saw one or two, but other than that, I mean, the only one I can really remember fully is when they played Notre Dame in 2017. So when you're not around a full crowd ever, I remember when they went to A&M in 2022, and this was a bad A&M team. This was the one that went 5-7, the one that lost to Appalachian State the week before, and I mean that crowd was causing them to get false start after false start after false start offsides, and they'll just have to battle this. Obviously, a better Miami team now, so we'll just see. But I think we can move on to Alabama versus Oklahoma rematch of what we had in the regular season a couple weeks ago. That game was in Tuscaloosa. Oklahoma came out, I believe, 23-21. So very interesting rematch. You give your thoughts first on this game.
Yeah, so we obviously saw this game a year ago, so or not a year ago, we saw it 3 weeks ago. So the first thing I wanted to do was rewatch the first game, and what that ended up making me do was I rewatched entirely the Auburn game, I rewatched the Georgia game, I rewatched the LSU game, and I obviously rewatched the OU game. And the common denominator in all 4 games is all 4 teams attacked Alabama in the exact same way. All 4 of them played a lot of 5 and 6 man pressures. They played a whole lot of eyes concepts. They played 3 deep, 2 under. They played cover 1 on third down where they were playing cover 1 no rat. So it was 5 blitzing, and then everyone's got one guy, and there was one safety back. They occasionally on second down, you saw a lot of different variations. LSU and Auburn ran more fire zones. on second down where they were going three deep, three under, whereas Oklahoma ran more fire zones, but they ran more two trap stuff where they were running cut or they were running some form of two man to both sides, basically running two man with five man pressures. And Georgia ran what are known as Big 12s, where they were running quarters to the field and then cover zero into the boundary. So you saw every single one of these teams attack Alabama with pressure. It wasn't a whole lot of four-man stuff. Now they did do that on third down, especially Georgia. Georgia was pretty aggressive in terms of their simulated pressures on third down against Alabama in the SEC championship. You saw that with the interception, which was a Tampa 2 simulated pressure where they wrapped in an internal looper. So all that to say is I think you can what the past 4 weeks have shown you is you can absolutely attack Alabama in protection. And when you hit Ty Simpson enough, he does he does tend to struggle. Right? He's gone now 10 games in a row with a turnover. Whether that's a fumble or an interception, he hasn't played a clean game since the first Georgia game, and that was the last week of September. So we're now going to go into 2 months and 3 weeks without Ty Simpson playing a completely clean game. And Oklahoma, since week 7, has been tremendous at forcing turnovers. We all remember the first game where they forced where they had the three turnovers. They turned LSU over. They turned South Carolina over. They've turned over basically everyone. They turned over Tennessee a bunch. They have done a really good job of turning teams over since basically the Red River game. And that's a scary sight if you're an Alabama fan because Alabama has not done a good job of taking care of the ball. They can't run the ball. And in terms of their protection plans, they really only have two right now where you'll see them run jet protection. So they'll slide forward either right or left with a Ringo or Lucky call, or you'll see them go with just big on big protection where they're scanning, where everyone's taking one or two steps back and they're taking the guy in front of them. And what that's left open a lot is a lot of teams will overload a side. They'll force a slide and then they'll attack the B gap behind it, or they'll just overload the B gap. And really, what they're doing is they're attacking the running backs in protection. Uh, Daniel Hill and AK Deer were really, really poor in terms of pass pro last 2 Saturdays ago. Jam Miller is better than those two, but he's not great in terms of pass pro. And against a team like Oklahoma, who really likes blitzing their linebackers, that makes you really nervous in terms of, I think for Oklahoma, a lot of what they did defensively is easily applicable to what they're going to do on Friday. So I do think they're going to create a lot of havoc. Now, the flip side of that is, and Clint, I think you're going to agree with this, if Alabama plays a clean game, they should win by 2 scores because Oklahoma is horrible offensively. The same stuff I said about Marcel Reed last week, you can say about John Mateer, except John Mateer is even more turnover prone. He had 3 terrible turnovers against Texas. He's turned it over against basically everyone. He's late on a lot of reads. He sees the wrong thing a lot. So it's to say that there's a lot of different ways this game can go. Where if Alabama plays a clean game, they'll win, but they haven't played a clean game in 2.5 months, so you have no idea if they can.
Yeah. I mean, that last point is where I was going to go with this game. I mean, when you look at that matchup that they had back a couple weeks ago, and you look at all the drives where Oklahoma got points off of, they weren't very long drives at all. I think maybe one may have been on their own starting on their own territory, but I think all of them were starting on Alabama's territory. Obviously, you had that very long pick six by Eli Bowen. You had the other turnovers too, but that's going to be the big key for Oklahoma in this game. They have to create turnovers because ever since that Texas game, um, ever since John Mateer got injured and then has came back from that injury, he has looked like a totally different player. I remember for those first 4 weeks where he wasn't injured, and I said, which now is aging like milk, that he looks like a Baker Mayfield clone. which now he looks pretty bad. And it's not even just his physicals too. Like it's not even like something you can just blame on his thumb either. Obviously, there were a couple of throws in the Texas game where like maybe like yeah, okay, maybe his thumb has something to do with it, but no, there have been some throws ever since that game where he's just making horrible reads. He's making horrible decisions throwing the ball. He's trying to play Superman sometimes when he doesn't need to, and he's just taking unnecessary risks and he's costing his team points on the board. I mean, even that LSU game where they were driving pretty well, he just ends up throwing like three, and I think it was three interceptions inside the red zone. You just can't do that because, I mean, if it wasn't for LSU busting coverage and leaving, I forgot who the wide receiver was, but leaving him wide open, LSU probably wins that game. So, I mean, John Mateer, he has to, I wouldn't even say he has to play amazing. He just has to play serviceable. He has to play good. He can't turn the ball over because if he turns the ball over, like they caused Ty Simpson to turn the ball over in the Alabama game, they're going to get creamed. They're going to lose by multiple scores. But on the flip side, Ty Simpson cannot turn the ball over. I mean, you've seen that Georgia game, that Oklahoma game, that when you can get pressure on Ty Simpson, he starts to see ghosts out there and he starts to panic. And that's something that Oklahoma does really well. It's something they've done well all season. They're a great turnover. They're great turnover creators, and I think this game it's going to be like the last game. It's going to come down to who turns the ball over less because I don't see Oklahoma scoring unless they get a short field or they get good field position. And on the inverse, I don't see Alabama winning if they are giving them that short field. So I think like I said, it's just going to come down to that for me, and I think I'm going to have faith in Alabama. I picked Oklahoma on my bracket, but I'm kind of 50-50 on this now. I think Bama can get it done. I'll go like 21-20, but it's not going to shock me in the slightest if Oklahoma wins.
Yeah, to add on to your point about the field position, the only drive that OU had that ended up on their side of the ball where they scored was a 41-yard drive, and it was for a field goal. Outside of that, their scoring drives were 41 yards, it was 22 yards, it was 31 yards, it was 23 yards, and a pick six. So
Okay.
to your point, when they don't get the ball, when they are forced to drive the length of the field, they don't score points. And that I think that will add to the final point I want to make before I give my pick. For both teams, any drive that ends in a kick is a win. It can be a punt. As long as you don't turn the ball over, I think both teams are happy with what happened, especially if you're Alabama. If every drive that you have ends in a kick, you're probably going to win the game. If every drive doesn't end in a kick, then I think again that's when you can get these wild swings to occur where especially if OU doesn't turn it over again. If OU doesn't turn it over again and Alabama does, I don't think much changes from the first game. In fact, I think OU is going to have an even better defensive performance. I think this is something that in general you see every time that there's a rematch is both defensive coordinators have even better games the second time in comparison to the first. I think we all remember the first Georgia at Texas game for how bad Quinn Ewers played. But if you watch the second game, I thought Georgia's defense played just as well. Now, Texas had more yardage and they had more sustained drives, but none of them ended up in points. And a lot of them, it felt very similar where they could not sustain offense. Texas couldn't. Their only touchdown came off of a chunk play on a slant on a 3rd and 5, off a bluff slant where DeAndre Moore acts like they're going to run a bubble screen. He shows a block and then he rips off of it. But outside of that, Texas didn't consistently create explosives outside of Quinn Ewers extending plays and finding Matthew Golden on a couple of explosives down the right sideline, which goes to my point that the second time these two teams play, and you look at this with Georgia, Alabama this year in the SEC championship, the second time two teams play, it tends to be even more of a defensive battle than the first one because You have more time to study tendencies. For defensive players, they understand what they're going to see a little bit more because they've played it. They understand what's going on. And offensively, there's only so many wrinkles you can add, right? You're not going to install a new offense. You can't add in 15 new plays. Whereas defensively, everything changes week to week. You're not running the same pressures every week. You're not running the same coverages every week. So you have the ability to be more diverse. You have more time. You have more comfort with what you're seeing. So I think it's going to end up being even more of a defensive game, which is why every single drive that ends in a kick is going to absolutely be a success. I'm gonna go with you. I took OU on my bracket, but I just have that weird feeling that this is a game that Alabama wins. It's the same way that last year before the Georgia Texas game when everything pointed to Texas winning that game. Just something told me Georgia was going to win. Something tells me Alabama wins this game. I don't know why, um, but I'll take Alabama to win, and I'll take a really close game. I'll take it 21-20. I think just like you.
Yeah. Um, those are our picks. You want to talk about some portal moves?
Yeah, we can do that. So, the big news around Texas from yesterday that I think shocked a lot of people was Leona Lafau entering the transfer portal. Obviously, he was a starter for Texas last year. Played in what Texas calls the will. Some people call it the money. Some people call it whatever they want. Some people call it the buck. It doesn't really matter, but uh, I don't share the same sentiment as a lot of what people do. I don't know that I think this is a huge loss for Texas. I think early in the year, if you had sustained that level of play throughout, I think my tune would be different. But I think from what you saw from Ohio State to what you saw against A&M throughout a 12 game sample size, not all of it was great. In fact, I would say a lot of it was very average. I thought he was good at linebacker. I don't think he was great. Uh, I think you can upgrade. Honestly, I do think it's an upgrade. I think the guy who was playing behind him and who took a lot of his snaps against towards the end of the year, and that's Ty Anthony Smith. I think their tape was drastically different in that Ty Anthony Smith's tape was significantly better. And part of that is Ty Anthony Smith is just much more comfortable playing as a stack fit player. And what I mean when I say a stack fit player is if you watch the way that Leona Lafau wants to play, is he wants to be super downhill. He wants to plug gaps. He wants to play almost like a blitzer does. Whereas the way Texas wants to fit the run is a lot slower. It's a lot more how Georgia fits it. It's a lot more how Florida fit the run. It's a lot how Oregon fits the run, where you're working laterally first. You're trying to stack a gap to get double teams to work off the defensive lineman, and then you fall back to whatever your primary gap was. So if you've ever seen a playbook and you see A to C, what that means is both linebackers, if my nose is the nose tackle, they're going to stack over the nose. They're going to try to work the double team off the nose tackle, and then they'll fall back to their primary gap. And that's not something that Leona Lafau, from a footwork standpoint, was very good at. I thought he got his feet caught up under him a lot. I thought he was too wide at times. You could also see him work downhill too much, where when you're playing with a stack fit, you want your first step should always be laterally, and at most it should be a 45 upwards. Too often it was 1, 2, and then sideways, where he was taking steps to work vertically. And when you do that, what ends up happening is you can get yourself caught in the trash because when the line gets reset or when guys are trying to bounce it and you have someone who's a foot in front of you, it's a lot harder to slide and get over there than when you're 3 yards back and you're seeing it and you're able to track the back and you're able to mirror his feet to your feet. Where if the back is still working forward, you're still working lateral. And once the back declares, now you can start to work downhill and fill a little bit harder. That wasn't something that he did a whole lot of. So that was one thing that for me, when I watched on tape, I found myself saying a lot with Leon Lafau. And I didn't say that at all with Ty Anthony Smith. I thought he looked tremendously comfortable in that role. So I don't know that it's a significant loss for me. I think you can upgrade in the portal. I think putting out Bo Barnes, Brad Spence, Ty Anthony Smith, and Tyler Atkinson, Texas is going to be more than fine next year. I think the linebacker room, quite frankly, is going to play better than it did a year ago, as weird as that may sound.
Yeah. Obviously, for a lot of people, it was a shock. I mean, you have a guy who I think he even started in 2024 for a good bit.
Yeah.
So you have a 2 year Letterman starter transfer out. And as you pointed to earlier, yeah, he did say he likes to play more of a downhill type of game. But I'm gonna go with you that I don't think it's necessarily that big of a loss. I thought he was serviceable for the time that he started. I don't think he really did much special. I don't think that he was really a game changer, nor do I think that he was some liability that we had on the field all the time. Um, I do think Ty Anthony Smith is a better player. I think that a lot of Longhorn fans may remember this guy. He doesn't play exactly like him, but I think he has the athleticism as him. Gary Johnson from 2018, a very fast guy, very agile, a linebacker transfer we had. I see that in Ty Anthony Smith. He every time I saw him on the field, he made plays. He was a difference maker. I mean, you saw in the second half of A&M, even though he's one guy, I mean, you could see the impact that he was making when he got on the field after serving his first half suspension. So, I mean, I'm very confident in our linebacking room. You have Tyler Atkinson coming in, who some people say may be a better pure linebacker than Anthony Hill. You have Bo Barnes on the bench, who's very, yeah, you said that. Someone said that it was you or Joshy. Bo Barnes, very athletic guys, very good linebacker. Brad Spence, who he made plays this year, and I think seeing him at linebacker will be better for him. And yeah, I'm very confident in the linebacking room. And yeah, we still got a lot more time for this portal window. Obviously, we'll probably see maybe a couple other guys hit the portal. I'm not too sure about that, but also we will be expecting some um, draft declarations. So all this stuff in the next week or two will determine a who we see in the bowl game, b what our roster is going to look like next year, and c what we hit in the portal, what position groups, and what type of players we go for.
Yeah, I think you said it well. Um, just to add on to the Tyler Atkinson thing, um, I've been pretty on record about I think he's a top three linebacker or top three player in that recruiting class in terms of the entire country. I think he's one of the three best players. I think he's probably going to start immediately. And from a pure linebacker standpoint, so I mean, not as a blitzer, but just looking at it from how he fits the run and how he is in coverage and his sideline to sideline ability, I do think he's a better player in that sense than Anthony Hill was when Anthony Hill came out of high school, where Anthony Hill is kind of a thumper, right? You think of a more old school linebacker. That's what Anthony Hill is, where he hits guys and he's going to be really good downhill, and you put him off the edge and he creates a lot of havoc. Tyler Atkinson is a really fluid mover. He's got really good hips. He flips his hips at a really good level. I think that's going to fit really well with what PK wants to do in terms of cover three and the way that he can play the hook curls, even from just the sense of a bonus drop, where if a quarterback's looking to the right, you open your hips up left and then you drift back right. It's almost like you're trying to bait a quarterback. If anyone remembers, I think it's called lurking in Madden. It's basically that idea. Um, so I think Tyler Atkinson's going to be fantastic for Texas. A couple other guys we can talk about that have entered the portal. Derek Williams, he entered the portal a few days ago. DeAndre Moore isn't entering the portal, but he's declaring for the draft. And that was something that we kind of knew was going to happen for a while now. It wasn't expected that he was going to come back. I would expect Texas to be not active in the portal for receivers, but I would expect to see them make some calls and they'll take some swings, and we'll see where that goes because this is going to be a pretty expensive portal window for Texas. You look at last year; it's not going to be like that where it's loaded in one position. It may be. If it is, it's going to be offensive line, particularly on the interior. you will see them take a couple guys there, and they'll go big game hunting there because you and I have said it for a really long time. 2026 is the year for Texas. It's Arch Manning's second year. You're going to have Emmett Mosley back. You're going to have Ryan Wingo back. You might have Trey Wisner back. You have both of your tackles back. You're going to return a lot defensively. You have Lance Jackson who's played. You have Justice Terry that's played. You're going to have Murad Watson back. You're going to have Hero Canoe back. You're going to have Alex January back. You're going to have Kobe Black back. You're going to have Cade Phillips. You're going to have Grayson Littleton, right? Like the list goes on and on and on about key contributors that return, and you can't have the offense be what it was a year ago. You can't have the offensive line be what it was a year ago and expect to win a title. So I would expect Texas to be really, really heavy in terms of the interior offensive line. We'll see what Jack Gendries does if he enters the draft, which he may. I would expect Texas to go after a tight end too. And then outside of that, it's a little bit of who enters, right? If Trey Wisner enters, Texas will 100% go after someone in the portal. They're already going after someone in the portal, or they're already going after someone who they're trying to get in the portal and may end up in there. But there's a lot of guys that Texas will try to get, and we'll see what that comes. We'll see what that comes to. But I would expect a pretty aggressive approach from Texas in the portal.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to the portal, there's only obviously you want to get your other positions touched up. Like you want to get a receiver touched up when DeAndre Moore obviously leaves. Um, the chance that Trey Wisner ends up declaring for the draft, you obviously want to get someone at running back to replace him. You want some veteran leadership in there, and obviously some other key areas on the team. But the biggest point I think for every fan should be the offensive line. I mean, yeah, it improved some bit at the end of the season, but watching what I watched the first like 5 weeks and honestly the first half of the season, maybe a couple games plus, it was horrible. I mean, our offense looked very anemic. Um, we were lucky to score 20 points in a lot of these games. I mean, Kentucky, we were held under 20. Oklahoma, if we didn't get that punt return touchdown, we're left with 16 on the board. Obviously, still get the win, but you can't be playing a lot of these quality teams and expecting to win games when you came and score 20 points in the game. I mean, you saw this happen. Obviously, okay, we scored 21 in this game, but with Florida, for example, our offense was sputtering all day, and our offense and Arch was just getting completely. He was just getting beat up in the pocket. Pocket was collapsing. Got sacked. I think about probably close to 8 times. It was there were just a couple of these performances, and even against the group of five teams, I mean, UTEP even gave Arch some problems in the pocket. So obviously they grew at the end of the year, but you definitely need to hit some guys, especially on the interior. I think with the tackles, I think we're fine for this year. But also, I wouldn't mind getting other tackles. But interior offensive line is my biggest focus, and as long as we do really good in there, then I'm happy with how our portal class was.
Yeah, I think you said it well. I'm not going to add too much to that. Honestly, there's going to be more portal names for Texas. I think we can talk a little bit about the staff. Obviously, the former Florida running back coach Jabbar Jalouk was added to the Texas staff as a replacement for Chad Scott. Um, that is, from what I understand, at least somewhat a push for Jaden Ball. We'll see what that ends up coming to. I've heard things on both sides to suggest he's staying and that he's going to sign an extension with Florida. I've heard some good news for Texas in terms of there's some positive buzz there. So we'll see what that ends up turning into. Um, but I think it's a good move. He's a good developer. I Outside of that, I don't have a whole lot to say. I'm gonna be in wait and see mode with that hire, where he hasn't been a guy who's recruited a lot of 5 stars, but he is a guy with connections to Louisiana. He's obviously got connections to Florida. You assume he's got connections to Georgia, and that's been the main focus of Sarkisian in terms of what he's doing with his position coaches. Is it's getting guys in the deep south, getting guys who can help him take guys out of Georgia, take guys out of Louisiana, take guys out of Florida, and bring them to Texas. So we'll see if Jaluk can do that. If he can, it ends up being a really good hire. If he can't, we'll look at that hire with a question mark. But I would expect a few more staff changes after Texas is after Texas's bowl game against Michigan, and I think you'll see one in the secondary, and then you might see a couple others. But this isn't the last of the staff changes, and this is definitely not the last of guys entering the portal. So I would just keep an eye out on that.
Yeah, this is just gonna be very quick. Jabbar Jaluk, looking at his track record and looking at the backs that he's coached and looking at all the guys he's recruited, I like the hire. Obviously, he doesn't necessarily have the flashiest resume when it comes to the guys he's recruited, but from watching his running backs and how they've done, where the places he's been at LSU and Florida, obviously he's done some great job developing them. So. Um, Definitely will be an upgrade from what we had this year, which, to be fair to Chad Scott, wasn't entirely his fault. Had a very bad O line, had some injuries throughout the year, but uh, it should have been better than what it was, even with the circumstances that he was given. So excited to see what Jabbar Jaluk. Hopefully, something can come out of this in the portal. But other than that, don't really have too much to say. Just I like the hire and I like the upgrade.
Yeah, I think we'll really quickly give our picks on the two games that really don't need picks, but we'll give those two, and then we're gonna head out. A little bit of a shorter episode this week, but that's kind of what the semi off season presents, where Texas hasn't reached out to a lot of portal guys. In fact, the portal hasn't even opened up yet, so we don't have a lot to talk about in terms of what the roster is going to be. Uh, Catapult won't let us show all 22, so we can't break the game down the way we normally would. So a lot of things working against us here, but we really appreciate you guys being here. I'm going to take Ole Miss by 30 and Oregon by 40. I assume you'll have something similar.
Yeah, Ole Miss by a lot. Tulane, they'll get a little. Oregon, yeah, that game's gonna be bad. So that's all I really got to say about that. I like what Bob Chesney's done, but they're not doing anything in Austin.
Yeah. So I think we'll call it there. Thank you guys for being here. Please like, subscribe, comment, retweet, follow Ghost, follow the Total Coverage Sport, follow Total Coverage Sports at YouTube, and follow them over on Twitter. Follow Clint at NBA Hornboy on X. Follow me at Pack Talks XO, and have a great night. And we'll see you guys next Tuesday.